Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And in today's video, we are reacting and giving our thoughts and analysis on the AP Top 25 after another crazy busy weekend in college football. There were some massive upsets and a lot of games that we have to break down, talk about, especially when we start talking about the college football playoffs. Now, of course, this is not the FBS college football playoff rankings. Those come out on Tuesdays. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on our reaction video to that as well, because that has big ramifications for who ends up making the college football playoffs. But the AP Top 25 is another interesting way to look at it here. We also have a Justin Fields jersey giveaway on the channel. So if you're interested in that, leave a like, also be subscribed and comment anything about the video today. It could be about your favorite team here in the top 25. Could be just the words jersey giveaway, something easy like that. Without further ado now, Austin, let's jump into the video here. 25-21, we got the Pitt Panthers here, the Raging Cajuns at 24, the Nittany Lions at 23, Coastal Carolina and NC State round out 22 and 21. Let's talk a little bit about Pitt this year. They've had a few of their ups and downs. Were in the top 25, jumped out a little bit, find themselves back here in the top 25 now, representing the ACC. What's your thoughts on Pittsburgh?
Yeah, Kenny Pickett has been a near Heisman level player. He has far exceeded his expectations there at Pitt. Teams or people are really underrating Pittsburgh in the ACC for sure. There's a couple of other heavy hitters in that conference that we thought were going to dominate. Clemson being one of them. They have just not been that team. Miami's been down. This conference has kind of been shaken up by those top heavy hitters not being the same caliber teams that we're normally used to seeing. But Pittsburgh's been a good team. Kenny Pickett is a huge reason why.
Looking at the 24-22 range, Austin, we got two teams in the Sun Belt here, Louisiana Lafayette and also Coastal Carolina. Both of those teams are at 8-1, and Penn State right in between them at 6-3. Some of our more casual viewers, people who maybe aren't as tuned in with college football, might be wondering, how does a 6-3 team land above an 8-1 team? Talk about the importance of resume, strength of schedule, and all that goes into these rankings.
Yeah, the big thing here is the big strength of schedule for Penn State. Penn State has been having to face some really tough teams. The Big Ten has been as strong as it's been in quite some time. Michigan State, those kind of teams. They've been really tough plays so far. Ohio State's in the mix. The Big Ten West has actually been a little weaker or significantly weaker than the Big Ten East. So Penn State, they've had a lot of tough games on their schedule. That's why they are in this range, despite them having those 3 losses.
Right. These rankings here, not just fully looking at the actual record, but you have to take into account strength of schedule, the resume, who they've played, who they beat, who they lost to. All of that plays a factor here in the AP top 25. Moving into the top 20 now, we got 20-16 here. Looking at the Wisconsin Badgers, who've really picked it up as of late, had a key win a couple weeks ago. Then we have the Iowa Hawkeyes at 7-2. They had a win this week. Stay right at 19, though. Baylor drops down 4 spots after a surprising loss to TCU, and interim coach Jerry Kill there after the head coach for TCU did resign this past week. Jerry Kill, a former Minnesota Golden Gophers coach, gets his first win as the operating coach for the TCU team. Then we got Houston here at 17, and Auburn actually suffered a big loss to Texas A&M. I'm surprised that they didn't actually go down a little bit more just based off of the differential in that game, 20-3. What's your thoughts on that Auburn game, Austin?
Yeah, I thought they would have sank a little further than 16, but people really do believe in this Auburn team, especially the AP. A couple of other key things to note: Wisconsin jumping all the way up to 20 after being unranked last week. Definitely an interesting team. They've had their fair share of ups and downs after huge upsets and huge disappointments. They've been a team that's been a little inconsistent in that regard. Nevertheless, they are here at number 20. And then Baylor, like you had mentioned, did fall down. But the key one here was Auburn being at 16 still, only dropping 4 spots after that, very, very tough loss that they suffered. This is a team that you never know what you're going to get out of them. Sometimes they play at a phenomenal level, but they did not bring their A game.
They definitely did not in that game. I also want to highlight the Houston Cougars having a great year at 8-1, representing the American Athletic Conference. They find themselves at 17. Really, really good season for the Cougars at this point. Let's go ahead now, Austin, jump into the top 15 here. We've got UTSA, which has slowly been a riser throughout this whole process. We'll talk a little bit more about them in this segment. Also, BYU finds themselves back at 14. They've had their own ups and downs throughout the AP top 25. Wake Forest got to the highest they've been ranked in quite some time in the AP Top 25 last week, found themselves at 10, fall to 13 after a defeat this week. Ole Miss jumps up to 12 after a big win over Liberty. And then we also touched on Texas A&M, their win over Auburn. I think the first one I want to talk about here, Austin, is Ole Miss, specifically the quarterback matchup in that game. On the channel last week, I talked about the matchup between Matt Corral and Malik Willis. Matt Corral came out and dueled with Malik Willis and probably outperformed him. Earlier this year, you made a video saying that that Matt Corral could very easily become QB1 in this year's draft class. Do you believe he's done that?
I think he has so far. He went head to head with Malik Willis. Now, do I think that Malik Willis has potentially the higher upside? Yes, I do believe he does have the potentially the higher upside in terms of, how physically gifted he is, and just his overall talent that way. But I think right now Matt Corral is the better quarterback. He proved it in this game. Malik Willis threw 3 picks in that key matchup, which was really tough for them because they got on that national stage, and unfortunately they could not come out with the win. So Ole Miss moves up there. The other key games, UTSA had a very nice game against UTEP. I watched that one. I was very, very engaged. UTSA really controlled that entire game. And them being 9-0, that they're really shocking a lot of people. Like I had mentioned before, it was just 10 years ago or a little longer than that ago that they didn't even have a football program. It has been revived, and this team is really looking phenomenal. Honestly, the Texas A&M, another team that's been up and down. They started in the top 10 to begin the year. They fell out. Now they're back. They've had huge ups and downs, but Jimbo Fisher has really coached up this team well. Calzada looks good. Spiller looks good. I think this is a talented team, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, Texas A&M has proved that they deserve to be right here in that top 10 conversation at least. They find themselves at 11 currently, and then UTSA all the way up to 15 for Conference USA, 9-0, playing great football. Jeff Traylor, he's had some job offers in the past, has elected to stay with UTSA up to this point, and it's paying dividends. He's really built up that program. You've talked about him quite a bit on the channel, and it's really key for them to have that continued success and continuity at that head coaching position moving forward. Now let's jump into the top 10 here, Austin. We're looking at number 10 being Oklahoma State. Again, another team that's been up and down throughout the process. I think this year has been really wide open in college football. We'll have your thoughts on that in just a second. Michigan State find themselves tied together here 9-8. Notre Dame at 7, and Ohio State finds themselves at 6. So a very interesting group here. Of course, Michigan State, after a loss this week to Purdue, still find themselves above Michigan. Do you think that they got it right there with Michigan State over Michigan?
Yeah, I think they do have this one right. Michigan State, that was a weird game. Honestly, did not expect them to drop that to Purdue. And I don't know what is with Purdue just being the home wreckers for all of these top ranked teams. They've been incredible in those big games, those big stages, but they've also lost some games that really make you scratch your head. That's why they were number 1 in terms of, others receiving votes in this top 25. They were at that top spot because they show flashes of being phenomenal, and then they just drop other games that they shouldn't. But Michigan, I think they have it right there. Oklahoma State being there at number 10, I think they have that right. They've been very, very consistent. Their one loss came at the hands of Iowa State. And then you look at Notre Dame, who put on an absolute show, and Ohio State. That was a close game. If you guys watched that one, very well could have been Nebraska's game for the taking. Unfortunately, they couldn't capitalize on some of those key plays there. So Ohio State at number 6. I'm not surprised by the rankings. I don't know if they necessarily got that right, but I'm excited to get into this top 5.
Yeah, me too as well here. Just looking really quickly again at the 10-6. I think one thing to note about the rankings here is we've kind of seen them start to level off and settle down with how much they're overreacting to wins and losses. The biggest margin we see here is a change of 3, and that was with Michigan State losing to an unranked Purdue. So right now, the rankings, you're looking at a whole body of work really starting to dictate and indicate who the best teams in the nation are, and the AP Top 25 starting to resort to that when it comes to win and losses down the stretch of the season. Moving to number 5 now, we here have the Oregon Ducks, who sit at 8-1. Another example here, like how Michigan State beat Michigan a few weeks ago, find themselves one spot ahead of Michigan. Oregon earlier this year took down Ohio State, find themselves one spot over Ohio State, representing the Pac-12. What's your thoughts on Oregon this season?
Now, here's the big conversation. We had this at the very start of the year. Oregon beats Ohio State, yet Oregon remains above Ohio State in the rankings. Now, I think part of that and the politics that all go into this, yes, they have the head to head, but Ohio State obviously loses a game to them in that head to head, but Oregon drops one to an unranked team. It's just weird. I'm not exactly sure how they came up with that. I don't know if you agree with this idea. I think Ohio State with that head to head should actually be higher. People argue because I guess I don't understand it. I don't get that part of it.
Right. You always have that little duality there between, hey, Oregon beat Ohio State, but at the same time, Oregon lost to a worse team than what Ohio State lost to. That's where you get kind of some of that conflicting thoughts on the AP Top 25. It's not a perfect method by any means. Not everything that is ranked here is something that we agree with, that we would personally do ourselves. So it becomes an interesting thing to react to because, like you said, Ohio State, especially as of late, has been a very good team. Of course, a close game this week to Nebraska, but they've really tightened some things up. CJ Stroud's been playing great football. So there's real conversation there, 6-5 here in this list. Moving to number 4 now, Austin, we have Oklahoma, who has been phenomenal since moving to Caleb Williams at that quarterback position. He's the long-term starter there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This team definitely has a different feel, different energy with him. He does what it takes to win games. He has heart. He's got passion for this team. Oklahoma definitely looks better. I was nervous about them when they had some really close games against lesser opponents, almost let it slip away. Kansas being one of those games as well. So Oklahoma, they're sitting here at 4. I'm not as worried about them as I once was. However, it's going to get messy down the stretch here.
Right. I think one key thing to talk about here, we talked about the FBS college football playoff rankings as well. We're not going to get super into that, but Oklahoma is one of those teams that is hurting that based off of how close some of their games have been against lesser opponents. Obviously, the AP Top 25 here, giving them a lot of credit. They're at 9-0. They've won all their games. However, maybe the FBS college football playoff rankings is taking into account a little bit more who they played, how they looked in those games actually, and that's why Oklahoma sits lower in those rankings. Let's move on to 3 now here, Austin. And we've got another really good team here, the Alabama Crimson Tide. The only game that they lost this year was to Texas A&M, who, yes, they were unranked at the time, but now sits 11th in the nation. So it's not like they're really a true unranked team. I think that they were a little too low earlier in the season when they went to unranked. Like you said, they were top 10 to start the year. Alabama's a really good team. Talk about some of their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, obviously, I think that this team's strength is throwing the football. Young is a terrific quarterback. In that LSU game, watching that one made me question a little bit overall, what this team is. They were very close to actually losing that game. LSU had them on their heels in that second half. They end up coming out on top. However, they didn't look phenomenal in that game. LSU had 3 guys in the secondary out going into the game, had 1 guy hurt in the middle of the game. So you had 4 total secondary guys out during that game, and they definitely didn't exploit those matchups as well as you would hope. However, Alabama sits here. That's not going to sit well with people because Oklahoma's undefeated and at 4. So this is where it gets interesting. This is where that conversation gets into. This is an undefeated team sitting below it. And then we're going to get into a more controversial team here at number 2.
Yes, that number 2 team here is, of course, Cincinnati. And a lot of people look at Cincinnati and say, representing the American Athletic Conference at 9-0, who have they beat? How can they be ranked above Alabama, Oklahoma, Oregon, Ohio State? A lot of people in our comment section, ask us all the time, do we actually think Cincinnati would beat those teams? The FBS college football rankings seems to have a similar opinion with a lot of our viewers, where Cincinnati is not ranked in the top 4 for the college football playoffs at the current moment in time. One thing I want to say, they have 3 guys who are first-round level talents in the NFL, in Desmond Ridder, also Ahmad Gardner and Myjai Sanders. They have a lot of real talent on this team. Now, do I actually think they would beat Alabama in a head-to-head matchup? No, probably not. But at the same time, the AP Top 25 is a lot more than just a 1-game head-to-head matchup for Pick'em. It's about the resume. We've talked about that. Of course, Cincinnati's resume is not necessarily there, but their record's there. They've consistently beat the teams that they needed to beat. And for a team that plays very, very well for them, it's hard to knock them off that number 2 spot. What's your thoughts on Cincinnati, Austin?
Yes, I think it comes down to that whole resume thing. They have the 9-0, but then that's where it kind of contradicts itself in these rankings, having Oklahoma at 4 then, right? Because they are undefeated. Yes, they've beat better opponents than Cincinnati has as well. and they are talented, right? So you have all those same components. Why are they not at 3 then? If that's the logic we're using. So that's something that I'm really excited for people to talk about in the comments section. Let us know in the comment section below who got this right. Is this the right way of looking at it? Do you think Cincinnati should be 2? Do you think they should be lower? That's going to be a great topic for discussion.
There's two common issues, I think, throughout the AP Top 25 that a lot of our viewers have issues when they're looking at this list. And that's subjectivity is the first word and inconsistency as the second word. You're looking at, the 9-0 topic of discussion like we just had with Oklahoma and Cincinnati. Oklahoma's probably got the better talent on the field, if we're going to be completely honest about the situation. They've also, played some really good competition. Of course, have had some issue games against lesser competition, like we talked about. But why does Cincinnati get bumped ahead at 9-0? That's where you get into the topic of subjectivity, the politics behind these rankings. You also go into the inconsistency in the rankings, where you have a whole bunch of teams at 9-0 that aren't next to each other for really no apparent reason at this point. But that leads us to our number one team. And I think this is the one that everyone this year can agree on. That is Georgia, sitting at 9-0. They're clearly the best team in the nation. Their defense is phenomenal, headlined by Jordan Davis, who's been in some Heisman conversations. Austin, I'm not necessarily sure if you agree with that. There's also a lot of other talents on that defense. That offense also has things moving in the right direction. What's your thoughts on the Bulldogs this year?
They've been great. They've been great offensively. They've been great defensively. Once again, Stetson Bennett put together a nice game. We saw him convert on a key 4th and 6, drop the ball in the bucket there. Perfect throw over the shoulder. They trust him in those big time situations to convert. Definitely on that 4th and 6. I was not expecting them to throw it to the end zone, but they ended up doing it, converting. This team's got some guts. They are one of the best defenses that we've seen in the last decade. And you can even compare them against all-time great defenses. This team smothers offenses, and it's just incredible how consistent they've been this year.
Austin, if the over-under, if the betting number is -150, so $150 bet wins you $100 on Georgia to win the college football playoffs this year, are you hitting that bet?
I am. I believe in this team. No matter who's in at quarterback, I feel comfortable, whether it's Daniels, whether it's Bennett. Both quarterbacks are competent, and you don't really need to do a lot because you have a dynamic rushing duo, and the defense is going to get you stops when you need it. I'm hitting that bet. I'm definitely going to take that. I think Georgia's that talented, that well-rounded.
I would be confident in them as well, just based off of their performance this year. They've shown themselves to be the best team in the nation. Again, hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video. If you did, leave a like. Also, be subscribed and leave a comment to be entered for that Justin Fields jersey giveaway. We're super excited to be able to give away a jersey to one of our lucky loyal subscribers. Again, thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.